Welcome to another tutorial of Proflearn YouTube channel. In this particular video, we're going to go through this open letter to the physics candidates of May-June exams. So we're going to go straight into it. Dear physics students, as we are approaching the IGCSE Edexcel exams, I would like to take a moment to remind you of the key topics that will be covered in the physics examinations. It's crucial that you dedicate ample time and effort to prepare for these topics to ensure your success in the upcoming examinations. The main topics you should focus on, not limited to waves, understanding the properties of waves such as amplitude. If you are given a graph, you can be able to identify frequency. If you are given a graph, you can be able to determine the wavelength and remember the wave equation. Radioactivity, understand the types of radioactive decays. Remember we had said about alpha, beta, gamma radiations. Understand the effect they cause on the nucleus when a particle emits a beta radiation, when it decay giving out alpha. How does that affect the nucleus? Those are some of the things that you ought really to remember in as you are preparing for these exams. So for instance, here under waves, we are talking about reflection. You see an incident ray is approaching a reflecting surface, which is a mirror. Here we have the normal, then the ray is going to be reflected such that the angle of incidence is equal to the angle of reflection. Under motion in the universe, you need to be reminded that you need to understand different characteristics and properties of the orbits of different bodies. Understand how the orbit of a planet differ to the orbit of a comet and to the orbit of the moon. Also, you need to remember that orbit of a comet is elongated, it's elliptical, but the orbit of a moon is circular. So understand also different definition of the universe, what makes up galaxies. You need to understand the concept of electricity, how to do different calculations. And also we need to talk about electromagnetic spectrum, is also quite common in exams. Understand the different regions in the electromagnetic spectrum and know which one has the highest frequency and which one has the least frequency. For instance, if you are moving from radio waves all the way to gamma, gamma rays have highest frequency but shortest wavelength. You need to understand differences and also common properties of the waves in the electromagnetic spectrum. The difference is in terms of the size of wavelength and also the amount of frequency. But the common properties of the waves in the electromagnetic spectrum include all of them are transverse waves in nature. They travel through a vacuum, they travel at the speed of light, and also they transfer energy. Look at this kind of symbols we learned in class. You can be able to use this symbol to represent a filament lamp. This one represents a light emitting diode. This one represents a motor. This one represents an LED. You need to remember the formula for calculating electrical energy, which is current times voltage times time. So, and remember, time must be in second as we are talking about this. Moving on to the next part. For instance, here you are told which of this is a large collection of billion of galaxies. This is a universe. Yeah. Which of these is the unit for gravitational field strength? It's Newton per kilogram. We discussed that. Which statement explains why the gravitational field strength of the moon is less than that of the earth? Remember we had said the gravitational field strength depends on the size and also the distance. If the size is big, it means the gravitational field strength is going to be stronger. So the moon has less mass than that of the earth, and that is why it has a less gravitational field strength. I did mention you need to know how to state wavelength from a graph like this one is the distance between two successive crests, you need to understand that the amplitude is the maximum height from the mean position, and time period is the time taken for a complete wave. Also understand that frequency is number of cycles, number of complete cycles made per second. Determining the wavelength, here I got it to be 13 centimeters. And now you can see you need also the idea of working out um, knowing the wave equation and how to use it. We are told that a microwave has a frequency of 2.35 gigahertz. So you need to understand that 1 gigahertz is equal to 10 raised to power 9 hertz. So you are supposed to change this times 10 raised to power 9 and then times the wave equation, but the wave equation, rather the wavelength was 13 centimeters. So we had to change it to meters before you start working it out to get the answer 3 times 10 raised to power 8 meter per second. And if you're new to Proflearn YouTube channel, consider subscribing so that in time we're going to upload new tutorials, you'll be notified. All right, the next concern that you need to understand is the motion graphs. Motion graphs, we say that we can have a distance time graph, displacement time graph, velocity time graph. When you have a velocity time graph, the gradient of a velocity time graph represents acceleration, and the area under the graph of the velocity time graph, it represents the distance covered by the object, and that's what is covered in this particular question, both in Roman 1 and also in Roman 2, because you are supposed to state the feature of the graph that gives the distance traveled by the ball. This is the area under the graph, and if you are told to work out that distance that you are talking about, you need to use the formula of half base times height, area of a triangle, and work it out, because the shape of this line under the graph represents a triangle. So if it was a rectangle, you were to use the formula for a triangle. You use the formula of a rectangle. But if it was a trapezium, you are to subdivide it into different shapes that you can be able to find the area under the graph. I've seen mostly this kind of question being appearing in exams, whereby you are given a relation and then you are supposed to show whether it's true. In this case, you are supposed to substitute these values that you are given into the relation and check whether the answer you are getting, is it the same. If the answer is approximately the same or very close, it means that the results support the suggestion of this particular student. And another area that you need also to look at is pressure, finding pressure in solids and also finding pressure in liquids. Pressure in liquids is given by the formula density times gravity times the height difference, whereas in solids, pressure is given by force over area. So that's what was being tested in this particular part. You can see now again there is this question on velocity time graph. It can be also be tested like this, and you are told to maybe work out the distance you are working, the area under this graph. Also work out the acceleration. If you work out the acceleration, this object is decelerating because the speed is actually decreasing, so you will get a negative acceleration, which is actually deceleration. So this is 235 centimeter per second square. All right, so explain how the gas pressure changes if the temperature of the gas increases. Remember, we did learn about how gases exert pressure. Remember, when particles vibrate, they collide with the walls of the container. So as they collide, they exert a force, and force per unit area is pressure. So in explaining this, we are going to say that increase in temperature increases the kinetic energy of the gas particles. This results to an increase to the number of collision on the walls per unit area, resulting to increase in pressure. Further in electromagnetic spectrum, we are given a photograph that shows an X-ray image of a person's knee, and the person had part of their knee replaced. So X-rays are X-rays are part of the electromagnetic spectrum. Now, state another property of all the waves in the electromagnetic spectrum. I mentioned that they travel at the speed of light. They transfer energy, which was mentioned here. They obey the wave equation. All right, so those are some of the properties. And but if you are asked differences, talk of wavelength, different in wavelength and also difference in frequency. State the harmful effect of excessive exposure to X-rays. This can cause or lead to cancer. But need also to remember that uh, waves like microwaves, they cause internal heating of body tissues. Gamma causes cancer, even though it's also used to treat cancer. We are supposed to describe the difference between transverse and longitudinal waves. Remember, waves can be classified as transverse and longitudinal waves, whereby light is a transverse wave, but sound is a longitudinal wave. In longitudinal waves, particles of the medium vibrate parallel to the direction of the wave, whereas in transverse waves, the particles vibrate perpendicular to the direction of the wave. In longitudinal waves, those longitudinal waves are characterized by rarefactions. Rarefactions are actual regions of low pressure, and compressions which are regions of high pressure. Whereas transverse waves, they have crests, which are the highest points, and the troughs, which are the lowest point from the mean position. So state another property, or we've already mentioned that. The diagram shows part of the knee called the patella. The patella has been removed from the person's knee. The patella is a small irregular shaped bone that is denser than water, so it's going to sink. Describe how to find the mass and volume of this patella. There are different methods you can use, like displacement method, whereby you are going to place this into a cylinder that is having some water, and you check the level of water before inserting the patella. You call it V1. After inserting that patella is going to displace some water, and the level of water is going to rise up, and we shall call the final volume to be V2. So to find the volume of the patella, we are going to subtract V1 from V2, and that becomes the volume of the patella. To measure the mass of the patella, we are going to use a beam balance to do that. And for accuracy in any experiment that you're going to describe in your exams, you must ensure that you are going to give the aspect of accuracy. How are you going to ensure that that experiment is valid? You're going to repeat and find the average of the mass for this case as the accuracy of the experiment. Remember the formula for density. Don't forget that. For density is equal to mass over volume. This formula is never is never given during in the formula sheet. Most of the time it's not given, and you're going to apply that, and you're going to get 17, which is the mass, divided by the volume, which is 13, and we shall get the density is 1.3 grams per centimeter cubic, which is a confirmation that this patella is denser than water, because water has a density of pure water has a density of 1 gram per centimeter cubic. Talk of energy transfer, thermal transfer. Thermal energy is transferred through 3 different modes: conduction, convection, and radiation. Conduction occur in solids, and convection is a mode of energy transfer through liquids and gases, and radiation is the mode of energy transfer or thermal transfer through electromagnetic waves. So we are given an experiment here, and we can see some wooden ring has been used instead of metallic, and we're supposed to explain why is that. Wood is an insulator, and it won't get as hot as metals would, so it prevents the risk of burning from the hot apparatus. In order to describe we need to describe how energy is transferred by conduction through the metal strips. This is when one end of the metal is heated, the atoms of the metal vibrates. As the heat increases, the vibration also increases, and this makes the vibration to collide with the neighboring particles. Hence, the vibrations are passed between the particles to the other end, hence transferring energy. So here we are given different times it takes the tack. There is a metal tack that was tack on the strips, on the metal strips. So meaning when this was heating, energy was transferred. So if the metal tack falls, it means energy has been transferred to that end, and some melting has taken place, so the metal tag will fall down. So if it's taking longer, it means it's a poor conductor. But if it's taking a short time for the tag to fall, it means that it's a good conductor. Now, we are supposed to justify the use of a chart instead of a line graph. This is because metal is a discrete data. Remember, when you are trying to analyze data, you can either use a line graph or a bar graph. So depending on the type of data you have, if it's a continuous data like measurements that you are taking, you are going to use actually a line graphs. But if it's discrete data, for instance, metals, different types of metals is actually discrete data, so we are going to make use of this. So state how the student will improve the reliability of this result. This just by repeating the measurement and finding the average in order to identify the anomalies. And this also, we need to talk about the student concludes that the best method for transferring energy by conduction, that iron is the best. No, that's not true, because if you look at this, iron takes the longest time. So there are better conductors like copper, brass, and aluminium, whereby copper is the best. So iron is not the best conductor because it takes the longest time. So copper is the best. All right. Okay, so to prepare effect-free for these exams, I recommend the following: start early, use past papers, practice with exam papers to familiarize yourself the way questions are asked, understand the concepts by going through all the areas in the topics that you cover. Don't actually focus on understanding rather than memorizing. Seek help whenever you need support from your teachers and your classmates who might have understood the concept better. Stay organized, yeah? Keep track of your revision progress and make a study schedule to cover all the topics before the exam. Remember, consistent effort and dedication are the key to achieving success in your exams, and I believe in each of you, and know that with the right preparation, you can excel in your physics examination. Best wishes from Prof.